tropical, and the atmosphere here is so different than what you would find on an oceanic beach, but at the same time, it's so relaxing, so peaceful.
Skyscrapers, crystal clear lakes, delicious food, brutal winters, and summers that make them all worth it. On the surface, Toronto, Ontario, and Chicago, Illinois seem pretty similar. But then again, so do their respective countries, Canada and the United States. The reality is, though, both Toronto and Chicago are densely packed with distinctive cultures, architecture, and cityscapes. Welcome back to A Sense of Travel, and another episode of my Comparing the Senses series where I'm looking at how cities around the world stack up in the way they smell, the way the air feels, the ambience and the lore that creates the magic of the atmosphere, the sounds that fill your ears in the city streets, and, of course, the tastes that define each experience. Find out how these two cities stack up through all 5 senses in the latest installment of Comparing the Senses, Toronto versus Chicago. After the video, be sure to comment on which of these two cities you find has an experience that fits your persona more. I'm Michael. This is A Sense of Travel. Let's dive in. Before we dive into the senses that make up each city's experience, let's take a look at some very quick facts about each city in case you aren't familiar with either one. Toronto is located in the Canadian province of Ontario, right on the edge of Lake Ontario, with a city population of around 2.8 million and a metro area of over 6.7 million. Chicago is located in the Midwestern U.S. state of Illinois, right on the edge of Lake Michigan. Chicago proper is home to over 2.7 million people, but the greater metro area, known as Chicagoland, has over 9 million. So, the first thing to look at when stacking up Toronto and Chicago is perhaps the most obvious: their downtown skylines and cityscapes. We'll kick off in Toronto. Perched on the edge of Lake Ontario, Toronto's massive and sprawling modern glass and steel skyline is dwarfed by the towering CN Tower, which pierces the sky at over 2,000 feet above the ground. Shades of gray and blue in the modern, balcony-adorned skyscrapers and high-rises are broken up by canopies of lush, green trees and parks blanketing the dozens of neighborhoods. The gleaming blue and gray glass, balcony-adorned skyscrapers cluster around the urban canyons like trees in a forest, hovering over tons of older, traditional, Main Street-looking brick buildings. As you imagine yourself in those urban canyons, you'll notice that a lot of the shops and storefronts use the maple leaf in their logo, that you can see the CN Tower from almost anywhere, and that the shops, cafes, and restaurants are remarkably international. Although there are a few Canadian staples that remind you of just where you are in the world. Hint hint, Tim Hortons. Toronto's downtown also feels like the urban heartbeat of Canada, and maybe that's because of the flashing LED bustle of Dundas Square, which is a bit reminiscent of New York's Times Square. The downtown neighborhoods are each incredibly distinctive. Toronto is very much a city of neighborhoods, and the international enclaves can make it feel like you're stepping into a new country block by block. This is best exemplified by Toronto's Chinatown and Kensington Market, large enclaves with an incredibly local feel. Speaking of that local feel in Toronto's downtown, the Old Town and its low-rise brick buildings are quite charming, with a great deal of street dining, lots of local Torontonians shopping, and beautiful green parks. The St. Lawrence Market captures the sensation of Toronto as a whole in many ways, with delicious local eats, international boutique shops, and lots of local grocers. In many ways, the Old Town feels like a mid-sized downtown Main Street, creating a small-town atmosphere in the heart of one of North America's largest cities. Just like Toronto, Chicago's downtown is perched on the edge of one of the Great Lakes. The Chicago Loop is perhaps the most famous and iconic part of America's second city, and it sits right at the core of Chicago's downtown. Chicago seems to gradually pile up onto itself as it approaches the shore of the aqua blue Lake Michigan until it finally peaks as a mountain of high-rises and skyscrapers, gazing over the ocean-like lake. In my opinion, Chicago has one of the most aesthetically pleasing skylines in the world. At the street level, you'll get a lot of the same feeling that you get in Toronto. Commercial chains, restaurants, pharmacies, bus stops, car traffic, and busy sidewalks. When you look up, in both cities, you get the sense that you're in a canyon made of skyscrapers. One thing that really distinguishes Chicago from Toronto, and other North American cities for that matter, is the brown line of the L. Now the L is Chicago's metro system, except it isn't quite a subway. Most of the L runs above ground. The brown line, or the loop, circles downtown on elevated tracks made from what looks like bronze and gold painted steel. Many of the tracks run right above the streets below, which creates a very ornate, open tunnel sensation. Whatever you perceive classic, gilded, sophisticated 20th century architecture to be, imagine that at an exaggerated scale. That's what you'll see when you're wandering around Chicago, with a few exceptions. For one, along the Magnificent Mile sits the old water tower. Now this is a beautiful, very ornate stone water tower and adjacent building that sits in the middle of one of Chicago's busiest, most modern streets. That was one of my favorite parts of Chicago, and a welcome reminder that Chicago, while a young city, has a story to tell. This was one of the few, if not the only, structures that remained after the Great Chicago Fire in the 19th century. The city feels very blue, primarily because the glass skyscrapers reflect both the vibrant blue water of Lake Michigan and the blue skies above. The beauty of Chicago's 20th century architecture sits on full display along the Chicago riverfront, with landmarks such as the Wrigley Building, Tribune Tower, and Marina City towering in spectacles of glass, steel, and light over the sparkling water. Now, the city's overall color palettes are both cool and rather metallic regarding the overall cityscapes, as indicated here. When you see a video or a picture of a place and you try to imagine what it must feel like to actually be there, an important component is the way the air smells. Let's see how Toronto and Chicago stack up. Toronto is an interesting big city in that it has a delicate blend of natural, urban, and sweet scents wafting through the air. The urban canyons of Toronto's downtown bring the smell of concrete, brick, stone, a hint of maple, and even wafts of bacon to your nostrils. Particularly in bustling markets like Kensington or St. Lawrence, coffee, sweet baked goods, and international cuisine create a mouth-watering scentscape. As you move away from the gleaming skyscrapers and international neighborhoods onto the beaches of Lake Ontario, particularly out at the glacial Scarborough Bluffs or the Toronto Islands, scents of campfire barbecues, sand, florals, greenery, and crisp, fresh lake water permeate the air. If I were to create a Toronto-scented candle, it would smell of fresh water, Canadian bacon, flowering white trillium, concrete, maple, and red brick. Chicago, while still a lakefront city, doesn't have quite the same natural aroma that accompanies Toronto, although the fresh water from Lake Michigan and the Chicago River are omnipresent throughout town. Away from the lakefront parks, where autumn leaves create a crisp aroma on a Midwestern fall day, the urban canyons of the inner loop bring wafts of roasting coffee, sweet bakeries, damp concrete, auto fumes, and occasionally pizza, of the delicious deep dish variety. A scent that took me by surprise was the faint smell of chocolate wafting through the streets throughout the afternoons. As it would happen, a chocolate factory sits nearby and the aroma breezes through the city daily, adding a warm and sweet touch to the experience. If I were to create a candle that smells just like Chicago, it would smell of fresh water, chocolate, autumn leaves, concrete, oregano, and ozone. Toronto and Chicago represent two very distinctive cuisines on the North American continent, despite their proximity, and, in my opinion, both are mouthwatering. Let's take a look at some of the tastes that capture the essence of each city. We'll start in Toronto, where, despite the incredible multiculturalism, there are a few long-standing staples that really capture the spirit and essence of the city. Pea meal bacon sandwiches. At Carousel Bakery in the St. Lawrence Market, you'll find the famous and classic pea meal bacon sandwich, a thick, soft bun filled with thick-cut pea meal Canadian bacon. To add a kick to the rich bacon taste, I ordered my sandwich with a maple mustard sauce. After the first juicy bite, it's clear why this has become such a Torontonian staple. Ketchup chips. Ketchup chips. You know, it's genuinely incredible that Americans haven't jumped on this yet. Basically, ketchup chips are just potato chips of any kind, but with ketchup flavoring and seasoning. And y'all, ketchup chips are deliciously rich in flavor. If you're ever feeling a bit adventurous in your potato chip hunt, Canada has you covered. Butter tarts. Also found at the St. Lawrence Market, although they're quite common throughout all of Ontario, are butter tarts. These thick, dense, sweet bread tarts come with a strong maple syrup, sugar, egg, and butter filling of a sticky, gooey consistency. And they're sickly sweet. As the urban heartbeat of Middle America, Chicago is home to some hearty, dense, and absolutely delicious staples, many of which were influenced by immigration. As a matter of fact, the city's most defining tastes trace back to its Italian, German, and Polish roots. So let's take a look. Deep dish pizza. Look, I get it, there's a long-standing debate amongst New Yorkers and Chicagoans on whose style of pizza is king, but frankly, I don't see how there's a contest. Chicago deep dish is the thickness and density of lasagna with a thick, flaky, crispy golden crust, a sea of warm tomato sauce, and a heck of a lot of cheese. Biting into one of these slices, which you absolutely have to do with a fork if you get a medium-sized pizza, is like biting into pure comfort and warmth. I exaggerate not, I would eat the entire pie myself each time. Italian beef sandwiches. Chicago is known for its Italian beef, and at Al's Beef in the River North District, I tasted this heavy, greasy delicacy for myself. The sandwich is filled with a very spicy, deli-cut beef and is dripping in grease and sauce. Alongside provolone and a side of gravy, this sandwich will warm you right up on a chilly Midwestern fall day. Chicago hot dogs. A Chicago-style hot dog comes with yellow mustard, green sweet pickle relish, white onion, pickled sport peppers, and celery salt. Now, this is all fine and dandy, but another important trait is that ketchup never goes on a Chicago dog. Ever. I had mine at a place called the Hot Dog Box in the Loop, but hot dog stands along the lakefront are far cheaper. And look, there's no real winner in the realm of cuisine, as both Toronto and Chicago's cuisines are quite distinctive, and it really does come down to your own personal taste buds. This is also not even close to a comprehensive list of the defining tastes of each city. The soundscape of Toronto is quintessentially urban, at least in North American terms. The sounds of the Toronto subway rumbling underground beneath the metal grates on the sidewalks, cars echoing in the urban canyons, the hum of machines keeping the skyscrapers running, and the bustling sounds of crowds of shoppers, tourists, and locals alike fill the air in the city streets. This is especially apparent in places like Dundas Square, where jazz, crowds of shoppers, and bumping music create a stimulating atmosphere that, like Times Square, makes you feel as if you're in the heart of it all. One caveat to your typical urban soundscape is that of Lake Ontario. Especially when it's warm out, the sounds of speedboats, small crashing waves, seabirds crying, cawing crows, and families enjoying a day on the beach create a sense that you're at a lakeside summer camp, far away from the gleaming skyscrapers at the heart of the city. Being the quintessential American big city that it is, Chicago's soundscape is remarkably similar to Toronto's. While the CTA is pretty great in terms of North American transit, Chicago is still heavily car dependent, and the city streets are filled with the sounds of traffic in whatever form that might be. Honking, mostly. That said, the L, being primarily above ground, generates the sounds of train cars screeching and trekking along their tracks from the elevated rails. I actually find this kind of endearing and a bit nostalgic, although I can't quite figure out why. Like with Lake Ontario, the sounds of lake water from Lake Michigan, rippling and clapping against the concrete walkways and barriers fill Chicago's soundscapes, especially on the beaches and Chicago riverfront, joined by the sounds of music from the waterside restaurants and bars. Off in the distance, you'll hear the sounds of trains, sirens, cars, whistling wind, and the softer up-close sounds of birds and geese. Toronto experiences a humid continental climate, which basically means 4 distinct seasons that include hot, humid summers and cold, snowy winters. July's high temperatures average around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, with January's highs hovering around 31. That being said, Toronto has a fun atmosphere all year long, thanks in large part to how easy it is to access beautiful nature. Whether it's a snowy winter's day or a warm sunny day on the beaches of Lake Ontario. There's honestly a kind of summer camp at the lake vibe to Toronto, especially outside of the downtown area. I don't know how else to explain it. Now, if you like the idea of Torontonian weather, Chicago is a slightly more polarized version of it. Chicago also has a humid continental climate, but the July highs average around 85 degrees Fahrenheit, with January's around 32. There's a bit more humidity in Chicago and a lot more wind, although, fun fact, its nickname, the Windy City, has nothing to do with wind. That said, the lake effect from Lake Michigan can be a lot stronger here, and those winters are legendarily cold. The good thing about a Midwest winter is the community. Everyone hunkers down to hibernate. And then, in the summer, the whole of Middle America emerges to soak up the sun like a big, months-long party. So what do I mean when I talk about the comparison of the ambience and the lore of each city? Well, for starters, I'm a strong proponent of the idea that to really capture the spirit and the magic of places around the world, you have to let your imagination roam a bit wild. After all, urban legends, mythological fairy tales, and dramatized history are a big part of the identity of cities and countries worldwide. Even in newer cities like Toronto and Chicago, letting fantasy and folklore infiltrate your mind as you wander about can really bring out the mystique and the charm in different places. Toronto is one of the most multicultural cities on the planet. Something like 46% of Torontonians were foreign-born, making Toronto a true patchwork quilt of the world, but with that classic Canadian touch. Through the sea of skyscrapers, international markets, and glitzy billboards, you still get a slice of that old True North feeling. Whether you're in the Old Town, outside Maple Leaf branded storefronts, or on the Toronto Islands, where old, haunting structures of Canada's past, like the Gibraltar Point Lighthouse, where the original keeper's spirit is said to roam, add an aura of mystique. Whether you're in places like the not-so-old Old Town, or the stately campus of the University of Toronto, there's a rugged, new frontier kind of feeling. As if Toronto's story, while not brand new, is really just getting started. No matter how ingrained into the glimmering steel and glass you find yourself, you never really escape that camp at a remote lake sensation, at least not in the warmer months. Maybe it's just because of my American perspective, but Toronto feels far away and protected by its natural surroundings in a way that I've only experienced in places like Oslo, Norway. In comparison, Chicago, while equally as young as Toronto, feels like it has definitely found its identity. It's like the big city embodiment of classic Middle America. John Hughes made family movies set here that really set the city at the heart of American cinematic lore, and many of these films, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, were meant to serve as love letters to Chicago. In those towering, architecturally beautiful urban canyons, you can feel that sense of grandeur, excitement, and warmth, even if the air doesn't feel so warm, that you get when watching those films. From the screeching trains on the elevated tracks to the festive commercial buzz on the Magnificent Mile, to the classic Navy Pier, to the popcorn shops, pizzerias, big sports arenas, and that absolutely stunning Lake Michigan, Chicago feels like everything a big American city should be. Add in that sophisticated roaring 20s jazz age to the mix, and you really get a feeling for what makes Chicago one of the best cities not just in North America, but in the world. The idea here isn't to pit these cities up against each other. In fact, the idea is to celebrate the fact that there's so much world to discover, experience, and explore, even in neighboring countries. Thanks for diving into the gleaming, skyscraping lakeside cities of Toronto and Chicago with me today, and stay tuned for more city comparisons in the near future. As always, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.